You're not supposed to provoke me.
Claire Esposito had a specialty, making the mob boss lose his composure. All it took was a provocative smile, a smart remark, a dress that was too tight. And Vito Caruso, the man who ran half of New York's underworld, turned into a nervous boy. "You're playing with fire," he warned when she showed up in short pajamas in his bedroom. "Then burn me," she whispered, moving closer. Two sacred rules he never broke: never mess with your partner's family, never lose control. Claire Esposito was his best friend's sister. Off limits, forbidden. But when she touched his chest, whispering, "You want me as much as I want you," the rules turned to ash, and he kissed her like the world was about to end. Because maybe it was. Hi everyone, I'm Lena, the author of this channel, and today I wanted to thank our members. Thank you so much for your support, guys. So if you want to be featured in the next video, answer me below. What do you like most about my stories? I'll be reading all the comments. Chapter 1, Provocations and Forbidden Chemistry.
You can't resist me.
I'd always known Vito Caruso was dangerous, but never in the way people imagined when they whispered his name in the dark corners of New York. His danger wasn't in the guns he carried or the orders he gave in that deep, controlled voice that made grown men tremble. The danger was in the way he looked at me when he thought no one was watching. In that extra second, his eyes lingered on my mouth before looking away, in the tension that took over his broad shoulders whenever I walked into a room. I was 24 years old and had a very specific specialty that none of my college classes had taught me. I knew exactly how to make the most feared mob boss on the East Coast lose his composure, and God was my witness that I loved every second of it. The Caruso mansion was packed that Friday night, as it always was when there were important meetings between the families. My brother Bernardo was in the main room with Vito and the other men, discussing business I pretended not to understand, while I circulated through the party with a glass of red wine in my hand and a black dress that knew exactly what it was doing. Rebecca, my 17-year-old baby sister, was leaning against the hallway wall with that silly little smile she always had when Gail Caruso was around. I walked past her and gave her a light elbow jab, making the girl almost spill the soda she was holding. "Stop staring," I whispered in her ear, but couldn't hide my smile. "You look like those cartoons with little hearts in their eyes." Rebecca turned red all the way to the roots of her brown hair. "I'm not staring at anything," she lied shamelessly, but her eyes had already gone back to the 19-year-old boy chatting with friends near the staircase. "Besides, you're the last person who can say anything about staring at someone, Claire." I pretended I didn't know what she was talking about, but felt the heat rising to my face all the same. "I don't know what you're talking about," I mumbled, taking a long sip of wine that suddenly seemed too weak for the night I had ahead. "Of course you don't," Rebecca replied with that ironic tone she'd learned from me over the years. "Just like you don't notice that Vito Caruso almost breaks his neck every time you walk by, or that his jaw gets tense whenever some guy gets close to you." Before I could respond, the main room door opened, and the men started filing out, filling the hallway with the smell of expensive whiskey and Cuban cigars. Bernardo was one of the first, and his smile when he saw me was genuine and carefree, with no sign of suspicion about the thoughts his older sister had been having about his best friend. "Claire, Becca," he waved at us, using the nickname only he had permission to use. "Mom's already in the dining room. Go eat something while we finish up the details." Vito appeared behind my brother, and the way he was looking at me made my stomach tie into a tight knot. He wore a dark gray suit that probably cost more than my car, and the top button of his white shirt was undone, revealing just a hint of tanned skin underneath. "Esposito," he said, and it took me a second to realize he was talking to me and not Bernardo. His voice was deep and controlled, but there was something underneath, a tension I'd learned to recognize. Interesting dress choice for a family meeting. It was the opening I'd been waiting for, and I'd never been the type to let opportunities pass. "You think so?" I asked, tilting my head to the side as I took a step toward him. I thought it was quite appropriate. Black, discreet, elegant. His dark eyes quickly traveled down the neckline of the dress before returning to my face, and I saw the muscle in his jaw contract. "Discreet," he repeated, and there was enough irony in that one word to fill the entire mansion. Interesting definition. Bernardo laughed at something another man had said and moved down the hallway, leaving Vito and me momentarily alone in the crowd of people circulating through the house. Rebecca had finally worked up the courage to talk to Gail, and the two were a few feet away, lost in their own conversation. Library, 5 minutes, Vito murmured so quietly I almost didn't hear, and then walked away before I could respond, leaving only the smell of his expensive cologne in my racing heart. I waited exactly 3 minutes before slipping away from the party, walking through the mansion's hallways as if I were just looking for the bathroom, but my feet took me straight to the library at the end of the east wing. The door was ajar, and when I pushed it open and entered, I found Vito standing near the enormous shelves of old books, hands in his pockets, and an expression that mixed frustration and desire so intensely it took my breath away. "This is crazy," he said, as soon as I closed the door behind me. "You know that, right? You're the one who called me here," I replied, leaning against the solid wood door, while watching the way the dim light from the lamp cast shadows on his face. "If it's crazy, then you're just as crazy as I am." Vito took 2 steps toward me, eliminating half the distance between us, and the intensity in his gaze made my entire body shiver. "Do you have any idea what you're doing to me?" he asked, and there was something almost desperate in his voice now. "How much I think about you, how much I want you even knowing it's completely wrong. Then show me," I challenged, my heart beating so loud I was sure he could hear it. "Stop talking and show me." He closed the remaining distance in 2 long strides, and then his mouth was on mine, and nothing else mattered. The kiss was urgent and desperate, his hands on my face holding me as if I might disappear at any moment, and I responded with equal intensity, my fingers tangling in the expensive fabric of his suit, as I felt my entire body catch fire. "This can't happen," he whispered against my lips when we finally broke apart to breathe, but his hands slid down to my waist and pulled me closer, completely contradicting his words. "You're Bernardo's sister. This goes against everything. Against the code." "Fuck the code," I said, echoing what he himself thought, but didn't have the courage to admit out loud, and kissed him again before common sense could win. This time was different, slower, but somehow even more intense, and I felt when Vito finally stopped fighting what he felt and simply gave in. His hands explored my waist, my back, pressing me against the wooden door as the kiss deepened in ways that made my head spin. "Someone could walk in," I managed to say when he started kissing my neck, but my voice was hoarse and completely devoid of any real conviction. "Then stay quiet," he murmured against my skin, and I felt the smile on his lips, even without seeing it. I don't know how long we stayed there, lost in each other, but eventually voices in the hallway brought us back to reality with a cold shock. Vito pulled away so fast I almost fell, and the expression on his face was pure panic when he recognized my brother's voice approaching. "Shit," he muttered, running his hands through his hair in an attempt to fix the mess my fingers had made. "You need to get out of here now." "How?" I asked, looking around the library that had only one door, the same one Bernardo was about to walk through. Vito thought fast, pointing to a side door I'd never noticed before. "Office, get out that way and go back to the main hallway. Quick." I obeyed without questioning, running to the other side of the library as I heard the main door's handle start to turn. I escaped through the side door exactly as Bernardo entered, my heart beating so fast I had to lean against the wall of the empty hallway for a full moment just to catch my breath. When I returned to the party a few minutes later, my face still flushed and lips swollen, I found Rebecca looking at me with an expression that said very clearly she knew exactly what I'd been doing. But she said nothing, just smiled in that knowing way, and turned her attention back to Gail, who had just made some joke that made her laugh. The rest of the night passed in a blur of superficial conversations and stolen glances across the room. Vito barely looked in my direction, but every time our eyes accidentally met, the intensity was so strong I had to look away before anyone noticed. When the party started emptying out and guests left, my mother Florence appeared looking for me. "Come on, dear," she said, with that gentle smile she always had. "Your brother's going to stay a bit longer working things out with Vito, but we can go." I nodded, and followed her and Rebecca to the mansion's exit. But before crossing the threshold, I looked back and found Vito standing in the hallway, watching me with an expression that made my stomach flip. There was desire there, and guilt, and something that looked a lot like fear of what we were starting. In the car, while Rebecca talked nonstop about Gail and how he'd been kind and funny, my mind was completely elsewhere. I could still taste Vito's lips, smell his cologne stuck to my skin, the way his hands had held me as if I were something precious and dangerous at the same time. When I got to my room, it was past midnight, and I had 2 unread messages on my phone. My heart jumped when I saw they were from him. "This can't happen again," said the first one. The second had arrived just 3 minutes ago. "That's a lie. I want it to happen again. And again. And again." I smiled at the phone screen, my fingers typing a quick reply. "Then stop fighting it." The response came almost instantly. "Your brother's going to kill me when he finds out. Only if he finds out," I sent back, and lay in bed with the phone on my chest, feeling a mix of euphoria and terror about what we'd started. The following Sunday, There was a family lunch at the Caruso mansion, and I spent the entire morning choosing the perfect dress, something that would seem casual, but that I knew Vito would notice. I ended up choosing a light blue summer dress that Florence had given me for my birthday, and pinned half my hair in a messy bun that looked effortless, but had taken 20 minutes to get right. The mansion was full when we arrived, with tables set up in the huge backyard and the smell of barbecue filling the air. Bernardo was talking with some men near the pool, and Vito was helping the kitchen staff bring out platters of food, his white shirt sleeves rolled up to his elbows, revealing tanned, muscular forearms. "Claire." Rebecca nudged me, pulling my attention away from Vito before anyone noticed I was staring. "Come with me to meet Gail's friends. They're super cool." I let my sister drag me to the other side of the yard, but my eyes kept returning to Vito, who had finally seen me and was now holding a platter of meat so tightly I was afraid he'd break the dish. The opportunity appeared an hour later, when most people were distracted, eating and talking. I'd gone to the kitchen to get more ice when I felt a hand on my wrist pulling me into the pantry. "Are you crazy?" I whispered, but there was no real resistance in my words, as Vito closed the door behind us and pressed me against the shelves full of supplies. "Completely," he admitted, and then kissed me with an urgency that stole all the air from my lungs. It was even riskier than in the library, because the kitchen was full of people preparing desserts, and anyone could open the pantry door at any moment. But that only made everything more intense, more desperate, and I found myself responding to the kiss with a hunger I didn't know I had. "Your dress," Vito murmured against my lips, his hands sliding down my waist possessively. "You wear these things on purpose just to torture me." "Maybe," I admitted, smiling against his mouth. "Is it working?" He answered by kissing me again, and this time was different. Slower, but somehow even more devastating. I felt when he finally stopped fighting completely, when he accepted that this, whatever it was, wasn't going to simply disappear just because it was wrong. "Claire, have you seen where—" My mother's voice approaching made Vito and me jump apart, and he practically pushed me out of the pantry seconds before Florence entered the kitchen. "Oh, there you are," my mother said, completely oblivious to what she'd almost interrupted. "Looking for the ice?" "It's in the freezer, dear." "Thanks, Mom," I managed to say, my voice surprisingly normal, considering my heart was still racing out of control in my chest. Vito came out of the pantry a few seconds later with a box of napkins in his hands, as if he'd only gone in there to get that, and the look we exchanged was loaded with everything we couldn't say out loud. The rest of the lunch passed in constant tension, with stolen moments of glances across the yard and the persistent feeling that we were playing with fire. Bernardo didn't seem to suspect anything, completely immersed in conversations about business and soccer, but I noticed Rebecca watching me with that knowing little smile more than once. When it was finally time to leave and we were saying goodbye at the mansion's entrance, Vito shook my hand in a formal greeting, but his fingers caressed the inside of my wrist so deliberately it sent shivers down my entire spine. "Until next time, Esposito," he said loud enough for everyone to hear, but his eyes said something completely different. "Until next time, Caruso," I replied in the same casual tone, as if my entire body wasn't on fire just from that brief touch. In the car heading home, Rebecca finally exploded. "You two are terrible at how obvious you are," she whispered while Florence drove, distracted by the radio. "Seriously, Claire, anyone who pays attention is going to notice." "I don't know what you're talking about," I tried to deny, but my sister just rolled her eyes. "Of course you don't," she said, but there was real concern in her eyes now. "Just be careful, okay? Bernardo's not going to like it at all if he finds out. You know how he is with those mob rules and code of honor and all that." "I know," I admitted quietly, looking out the window as we watched the Caruso mansion disappear in the distance. "I know, but even knowing all the risks, even understanding that we were breaking sacred rules and that there would be terrible consequences if we were discovered, I couldn't bring myself to regret it, because for the first time in my life, I felt completely alive, and Vito Caruso was the reason. And from the way he looked at me, from the way he kissed me like the world was about to end, I knew he felt exactly the same way. Chapter 2. Short pajamas and almost everything.
This is a mistake.
The safe house was 2 hours from New York, hidden among dense trees on a property that officially didn't exist in anyone's records. Vito had several of these scattered along the East Coast, places where delicate business could happen far from prying eyes and illegal wiretaps, and I'd never been to any of them until that Thursday night. "Why do I need to go?" had been my question when Bernardo showed up in the morning telling me to pack a small bag. "I have class early tomorrow, because Mom's going to visit Aunt in Boston, and Rebecca's going with her, and I'm not leaving you home alone with this whole Russo situation heating up." my brother had answered in that voice that didn't accept arguments. "You're staying with me and Vito at the safe house until Saturday." End of discussion. So there I was, sitting in the back seat of the armored SUV as we drove through dark roads, with a small suitcase in the trunk, and my heart beating too fast every time my eyes met Vito's in the rearview mirror. He was driving with Bernardo in the passenger seat, and the tension in the car was so thick I could barely breathe properly. The house was smaller than the Caruso mansion, but still impressive, all made of stone and dark wood, with security cameras in every corner and 2 armed men at the entrance. Vito parked in the underground garage, and my brother practically jumped out of the car, eager to start the meetings that would last all night. "Your room is the second on the right upstairs," Vito told me when we entered through the side door, and his voice was carefully neutral, too professional, considering we'd spent the last week exchanging messages in the middle of the night. "Private bathroom, everything you need. Stay there until we're done." "Yes, sir," I replied with a touch of sarcasm, and saw his jaw contract before he turned and followed Bernardo to the main office. The room was beautiful in a minimalist way, with a huge bed with white sheets and a window overlooking the dark woods outside. I threw my suitcase on the armchair and let myself fall on the bed, staring at the ceiling while listening to male voices coming from downstairs, discussing territories and percentages and things I'd learned not to ask about. It was almost 11 at night when I finally showered and put on the pajamas I'd brought, a set of short shorts and a tank top in pale pink silk that probably wasn't the most appropriate choice for a house full of mobsters, but it was comfortable, and I hadn't exactly planned to seduce anyone when I packed this morning. Or at least that's what I tried to convince myself as I looked at my reflection in the bathroom mirror and bit my lower lip. The house was quieter now, and when I carefully opened the bedroom door, the hallway was empty and dimly lit by lights built into the baseboard. I could hear distant voices coming from the ground floor, probably the meeting still in progress, and a sensible part of me said to go back to the room, lock the door, and go to sleep. But I'd never been very good at listening to the sensible part. Vito's room was at the end of the hallway, the last door on the left, and I knew this because I'd seen him come out of there earlier when I went to get water in the kitchen. My bare feet made no sound on the thick carpet as I walked down the hallway, my heart accelerating with each step until I was standing in front of the dark wooden door with my hand raised, hesitant. I knocked 3 times, softly, and waited. The door opened about 10 seconds later, and Vito was there, with his dress shirt unbuttoned at the first few buttons and sleeves rolled up, dark eyes traveling over me from head to toe in a movement that made my entire skin tingle. "Claire," he said, and my name sounded like both a warning and an invitation. "What are you doing here?" "I came to say goodnight," I replied with all the innocence I could muster, but from the way his eyes narrowed, I wasn't being very convincing. "I thought it would be polite since we're in the same house." "Polite," he repeated, and there was something dangerous in his voice now. "You show up at my room, in the middle of the night, wearing that, and you want me to believe it's just to say goodnight?" I shrugged, feigning a nonchalance I was far from feeling. "What else would it be?" Vito looked down the hallway in both directions, checking that we were alone, and then pulled me into the room so quickly I almost stumbled. The door closed behind me with a soft click, and suddenly we were alone, really alone for the first time since the stolen kisses in hidden corners of the mansion. "You're playing with fire," he warned, but he was already walking toward me, eliminating the distance between us with slow, deliberate steps. "Your brother's downstairs. There are 6 armed men in this house. Anyone could come up at any moment." "I know," I admitted, backing up until my back hit the wall, but there was no fear in my chest, only anticipation. "But you still haven't sent me away." "Because I'm weak when it comes to you," Vito said. And then he was so close I could feel the heat from his body, see the small golden flecks in his dark eyes, count every strand of stubble. "You know that. You use it against me. It's not against you if we both want the same thing," I whispered, raising my hand and letting my fingers trace the line of his jaw, feeling the muscles contract under my touch. He held my wrist, but didn't push me away. Instead, he turned his face and pressed his lips to the inside of my hand, a kiss so gentle it stole the air from my lungs. "What do you want from me, Claire?" "You," I answered without hesitation. "I want you, all of you, not just the hidden kisses and secret messages. I want more." Something broke in him with those words, and then his mouth was on mine and there was nothing gentle or hesitant this time. The kiss was urgent and consuming, his hands on my face holding me as if I were something precious, and at the same time something he wanted to devour. I responded with equal intensity, my fingers tangling in the fabric of his shirt, pulling him closer. Even when there was no more space between our bodies. "Bed," he murmured against my lips, and I nodded without thinking about the consequences, letting him guide me backward until I felt the soft mattress behind my knees. We fell together onto the huge bed, a tangle of limbs and gasping breaths, and for the first time there were no interruptions or fear of being caught. It was just the 2 of us, and all the desire we'd been suppressing for months, finally free to manifest. Vito's hands explored my waist, my hips, moving up my ribs possessively as he kissed my neck, my collarbone, every inch of skin he could reach. I arched against him, my fingers opening more buttons on his shirt until I could feel the warm skin and defined muscles of his abdomen. Claire, he whispered my name like a prayer, and there was so much emotion in that word I felt my chest tighten. Are you sure? I knew what he was asking, and I also knew that saying yes meant crossing a line there was no coming back from. But when I looked into his eyes and saw all the desire and vulnerability he usually hid so well, there was no doubt in my mind. I'm sure, I answered, pulling him into another kiss that said everything words couldn't express. And that's when we heard the footsteps, heavy, decisive, climbing the stairs in a rhythm I recognized immediately. Bernardo. Vito pulled away from me so fast he almost fell off the bed, eyes wide with genuine panic as he looked at the bedroom door and then at me, still sprawled on the messy sheets. Shit, he whispered with such vehemence that in another situation it would have been funny. Shit, shit, shit. Bathroom, I said, jumping off the bed and trying to fix the pajamas that had shifted during the kiss. I'll go to the bathroom. Vito nodded, already buttoning his shirt with fingers that trembled slightly, while I ran to the bathroom attached to his room and closed the door silently, leaning against it with my heart beating so loud I was sure it could be heard throughout the entire hallway. On the other side of the door, I heard the firm knock on the bedroom, and then my brother's voice. Vito, have you seen Claire? She's not in her room. Haven't seen her, Vito lied, and his voice was surprisingly steady considering what we'd been doing 3 seconds ago. Why? Did something happen? No. Just, I thought it was weird her bedroom door was open and she's not there, Bernardo replied, and I could hear the genuine concern in his voice. I'm going to check downstairs. She probably went to get water or something, Vito suggested too casually. You know how she is. Can't sleep in a different place. There was a pause that was too long, and when Bernardo spoke again, there was something different in his tone. Yeah, you're right. I'll check the kitchen. The footsteps moved away down the hallway, but I waited a full 3 minutes before opening the bathroom door and peeking out. Vito was sitting on the edge of the bed with his head in his hands, and when he saw me, his expression was pure agony. This can't happen, he said, but there was no real conviction in the words. Claire, this is going to kill us. It's going to kill his friendship with me. It's going to destroy everything. I approached and knelt in front of him, forcing Vito to look at me. But it is happening, I replied, echoing the conversation we'd already had before. Vito, this is already happening. It already happened. He's getting suspicious, Vito said quietly, and for the first time I saw real fear in his eyes. You saw the way he paused. He knows something's wrong. He just doesn't know what yet. Then we'll be more careful, I suggested. But even I knew how ridiculous that sounded, considering where we were and what we'd almost done. Vito held my face with both hands, studying me as if trying to memorize every detail. I can't stay away from you, he admitted, and there was defeat in his voice. I tried. God knows I tried. But you destroy me in every possible way, and I still want more. Then stop fighting, I asked, covering his hands with mine. Stop trying to resist this. We both know it's too late to turn back. He pulled me into a kiss, slow and deep, full of promises and unspoken fears. When we separated, we were both breathless, and I knew I needed to get back to my room before Bernardo came up again. Go, Vito ordered softly, but the way his fingers lingered on my face said how much he hated sending me away. Before he comes back, I stood up, checking the hallway before leaving the room, and stopped at the door just long enough to look back. Vito was exactly where I'd left him, sitting on the edge of the bed with an expression that mixed desire and guilt so intensely it made my chest ache. Good night, Caruso, I whispered. Good night, Esposito, he replied, and there was so much emotion in those simple words I felt my heart squeeze. I ran to my room barefoot and silent, closing the door exactly when I heard Bernardo's footsteps coming up the stairs again. I jumped into bed and pretended to be sleeping when my brother opened my bedroom door a minute later, peeking inside. Claire, he called quietly. I pretended to wake up startled, sitting up in bed with still sleepy eyes. Bernardo, what's wrong? Nothing. Just checking, he said, but his eyes scanned the room carefully before returning to me. You okay? I'm fine. Why? There was a pause, and then Bernardo shook his head as if discarding some thought. Nothing. Sleep well, sis. The door closed, and I let my body fall back on the bed, my heart still racing and my lips still tingling from the kiss. I grabbed my phone and saw a new message from Vito that had arrived 30 seconds ago. That was too close. I know, I typed back. Claire, what? The response took almost a minute. I'm completely screwed, because I don't care anymore. Tomorrow I'll regret this decision, but right now, I just want you. I smiled at my phone, my entire body still vibrating with adrenaline and unsatisfied desire. Tomorrow is another day. Good night, Vito. Good night, my love. And as I put away my phone and tried to control my heart beating out of rhythm, all I could think was that we were really screwed, because Bernardo was starting to suspect, and it was only a matter of time before everything blew up in our faces. But in that moment, lying in bed with the taste of Vito still on my lips, I couldn't bring myself to care about the consequences. Chapter 3, Real Feelings and First Danger. The following week was a carefully orchestrated torture, where Vito did everything to avoid me, and I did everything not to let him. We returned to New York on Saturday morning, and since then he barely looked in my direction when we were in the same space, always too busy, always with some urgent business he needed to handle in another room. But I'd seen the way he looked at me when he thought no one was watching, and I knew that internal conflict too well to give up now. On Tuesday night, when Bernardo asked me to take some documents to the Caruso mansion because he was stuck in a meeting on the other side of the city, I knew it was my chance. I wore dark jeans and a simple white blouse, nothing provocative this time, because I'd learned I didn't need short dresses to get Vito Caruso's attention. The mansion was strangely empty when I arrived, only 2 guards at the entrance and silence in the hallways that were normally full of movement. I found Vito in the main office, hunched over the huge desk covered with papers and maps, the lamplight casting shadows on his tired face. "Bernardo sent this," I announced from the doorway, holding up the brown envelope my brother had given me. Vito looked up, and his expression closed immediately when he saw me there. "Leave it on the desk," he ordered, turning his attention back to the documents as if I were nothing more than an ordinary messenger. I entered the office and closed the door behind me, and I saw his shoulders tense at the soft click of the lock. "Claire," he warned, still not looking at me. Don't what?" I asked, approaching the desk with slow, deliberate steps. "I just came to deliver some papers. You're the one assuming other things. You know exactly what I'm talking about," Vito replied, finally raising his face to look at me, and the intensity in his dark eyes took my breath away. "You know what happens every time we're alone." I put the envelope on the desk and leaned against the edge, crossing my arms over my chest as I studied him. There were dark circles under his eyes that weren't there last week, and his jaw was too tense, as if he were clenching his teeth to maintain control. "Why do you fight this so hard?" I asked quietly, letting all the vulnerability I felt bleed into my voice. "Fight us? You know why," he answered automatically, but his hands stopped shuffling papers and closed into fists on the desk. "No, I don't," I insisted, leaning forward until I was invading his personal space across the desk. "Because all the excuses you give are about codes and rules and my brother, but none of them are about us, about what you feel." Vito stood up so abruptly the leather chair almost tipped backward, walking around the desk with firm steps until he was standing in front of me, so close I could see the small tension lines around his eyes. "You want to know what I feel?" he asked, and there was anger in his voice now, but not directed at me. "I feel like I'm going crazy. I feel like I can't think straight when you're around. I feel like every time I close my eyes I see you, and every time I wake up, it's with your name on my lips." My heart accelerated in my chest, but I didn't interrupt, letting him finally put out everything he'd been holding in. "I feel like I'm betraying my best friend just by looking at you the way I look," Vito continued, his voice hoarse with emotion. "I feel like I'm breaking all the rules that have kept me alive until now. But more than all of that, Claire, I feel that even knowing all the consequences, even knowing this could destroy everything, I still can't stop." "Then don't stop," I whispered, raising my hand and touching his face, feeling the stubble gently scratch my palm. "Vito, no one's asking you to stop. Your brother will ask," he said bitterly, but didn't pull away from my touch. "When he finds out, and he will find out, because I'm terrible at hiding anything when it comes to you." I took a deep breath, gathering all the courage I had, and said the words that had been burning in my chest for weeks. "I love you." Vito closed his eyes as if the words had caused physical pain, and when he opened them again, there was so much emotion there I felt tears prick my own eyes. "Don't say that," he asked quietly. "Please, Claire, don't make this harder than it already is." "But it's true," I insisted, using both hands to hold his face now, forcing him to look at me. "I love you, Vito Caruso. I love you in a way that's scary, in a way that doesn't make sense, in a way that's probably dangerous and stupid. But it's real." "I know," he admitted, and finally, let the mask drop completely, because I feel the same way. "I love you so much it hurts, Claire. So much that I spend sleepless nights thinking about how to protect you from everything, including from myself." And then he kissed me, and it was different from all the other kisses we'd shared. It was slow and deep, and full of all the emotions we were finally admitting out loud. His hands pulled me closer, lifting me from the desk and pressing me against his body as the kiss deepened in ways that made my head spin. "But it doesn't change anything," Vito said, when we finally separated, resting his forehead against mine with his eyes still closed. "I still need to keep you safe. I still need to respect your brother. I still can't just have you the way I want. Then have me the way you can," I replied, and he groaned low before kissing me again, this time with more urgency, more desperation. We stayed like that for long minutes, lost in each other, until voices in the hallway brought us back to reality. Vito pulled away with obvious reluctance, fixing his wrinkled shirt while I smoothed my hair that had gotten messy. "You need to go," he said, but the way he looked at me said how much he hated sending me away. I nodded and headed for the door, but stopped with my hand on the handle. "Vito?" "Yes?" "I don't regret it, any of it. And you shouldn't either. He didn't answer, but the way his eyes brightened was answer enough. The following days passed in a fog of stolen glances and discreet messages, and Bernardo was definitely starting to notice something. He asked me strange questions, like if I was seeing anyone, if I'd met any new guy, if everything was okay with me because I seemed different lately. "I'm just tired from classes," I lied every time, but I saw the doubt in my brother's eyes and knew we were walking on thin ice. It was on Friday that everything changed. I was leaving the university when I noticed the car, a black sedan with dark windows that wasn't there when I went into class 3 hours ago, strategically parked near the exit with the engine running. Something in my stomach turned, some survival instinct that comes from growing up in a mob family, and I pulled my phone from my pocket as I quickened my pace toward my own car. I had just dialed Bernardo's number when 2 men got out of the sedan, and the way they looked at me left no doubt I was the target. "Claire Esposito?" one of them asked, and the Italian accent was thick and threatening. I didn't answer, just ran. I heard shouts behind me, heavy footsteps following me, and then hands grabbed my arm, pulling me with so much force I dropped my phone on the asphalt. I fought like crazy, kicking and screaming, until a hand covered my mouth and I heard a voice whisper in my ear, words in Italian I didn't understand, but that made my blood run cold. And then, out of nowhere, the man holding me was ripped away from me with such violence I almost fell. I stumbled backward and saw Vito there, appearing out of nowhere like a furious storm, dark eyes burning with a rage I'd never seen before as he punched the man with brutal force. The second man tried to intervene, but 3 of Vito's guards were already there, immobilizing him against the hood of the sedan, while Vito kept beating the first one, until Bernardo came running and pulled him back. "Vito, stop! He's already unconscious," my brother yelled, but Vito barely seemed to hear, his eyes still fixed on the fallen man as if he wanted to kill him with his bare hands. It was only when Vito finally looked at me, checking if I was hurt, that something in his gaze changed. The anger gave way to concern so intense it made my chest tighten, and he took 2 steps in my direction before forcing himself to stop, remembering that Bernardo was there watching everything. "Are you okay?" Vito asked, and his voice was hoarse, loaded with barely contained emotion. "I'm okay," I managed to say, even though I was shaking from head to toe. Bernardo looked between the 2 of us with an expression I couldn't decipher, and when he spoke, there was genuine confusion in his voice. "How did you get here so fast?" "I just got her call." "I was nearby," Vito lied, but even I noticed how false it sounded. The truth was, he probably had guards watching me, protecting me without my knowledge, and that said much more about his feelings than any words could. My brother kept looking between us, processing the intensity of Vito's reaction, the way he still looked at me as if he needed to make sure I was whole. And I saw the exact moment some suspicion started forming in Bernardo's mind, some connection being made that he didn't completely understand yet. But before he could question further, sirens sounded in the distance, and we had to deal with the police, with explanations, with the cleanup of the mess the Russos had created by trying to use me as a bargaining chip in their business. Later that night, when I was finally home, and Rebecca had forced me to drink hot tea even though I said I was fine, my sister sat next to me on the bed, with that knowing look she always had. "He loves you," she said simply, without needing to specify who. "I know," I admitted quietly. "And you love him. I know that too." Rebecca sighed and held my hand. "Bernardo's going to find out. You noticed the way he looked at you 2 today, right? The way Vito reacted when you were attacked. That wasn't a brother's friend reaction, Claire. That was a man protecting his woman." "I know," I repeated for the 3rd time, feeling the weight of all this fall on my shoulders. "But I can't stop. We tried, Becca. God knows we tried. But it's too late." My sister pulled me into a tight hug. "Then get ready, because when it blows up, it's going to be ugly." And as I lay in bed later, looking at my phone with 5 unread messages from Vito, all asking if I was okay, if I needed anything, if I wanted him to come over, I knew Rebecca was right. The time bomb was ticking, and it was only a matter of time before everything exploded in our faces. Chapter 4. Discovery and Explosion.
Stop fighting!
This isn't your concern.
Leave her! Leave her out of this!
I should have noticed everything was too quiet at the Caruso mansion that Tuesday night. I should have noticed the absence of the men who normally circulated through the hallways. Should have questioned when Vito texted me saying Bernardo had left to handle a problem at the docks, and that we finally had a few hours just for us. But I was so desperate for real time with him, for conversations that didn't need to be whispered and touches that didn't need to be hidden, that I ignored all the warning signs and just went. I found Vito in his office, and for the first time in weeks he smiled when he saw me, a real and unguarded smile that made my heart race in my chest. He pulled me inside as soon as I closed the door, his hands on my waist bringing me close as he rested his forehead against mine. "I love you," he said, and it was still new enough to make tears prick my eyes every time I heard it. "I know we can't have this the normal way, but Claire, I need you to know this is real for me. You're real. I know, I answered, raising my hands to his face and pulling him into a kiss that started soft but quickly deepened into something more urgent, more necessary. We were so lost in each other that we didn't hear the footsteps in the hallway, didn't hear the door opening, didn't notice anything until Bernardo's voice cut through the air like a sharp blade. What the fuck is going on here? I pulled away from Vito so fast I almost tripped, turning to find my brother standing in the office doorway with an expression that mixed shock, betrayal, and a rage so pure it made my blood freeze in my veins. Bernardo, Vito began, taking a step forward with his hands raised in an appeasing gesture, but my brother cut him off with a shout that echoed off the walls. No, don't come at me with excuses, don't come with explanations, don't come with jack shit. Bernardo entered the office like a storm, and for the first time in my life I saw real fear in Vito's eyes. You broke the code, Vito, the sacred code, the only rule that really matters. I can explain, Vito tried, but his voice was weak, without the usual authority it always carried. Explain what? Bernardo yelled, pointing at me and then at Vito with sharp movements. Explain how you, my best friend, the man I trust with my life, are kissing my sister. Explain how you broke the only rule that keeps this family functioning. I finally found my voice, taking a step forward even with my legs shaking. Bernardo, stop. Let me talk. You stay quiet. My brother turned his fury on me, and I involuntarily stepped back at the intensity of it. Do you have any idea what you did? Do you realize how this makes me look? Weak, without control, like I can't even keep my own sister away from my business partner. This has nothing to do with you looking weak, I argued, feeling my own anger starting to rise to combat the fear. This is about me and Vito, about what we feel for each other. Bernardo gave a humorless laugh, running his hands through his hair with such force it looked like he wanted to rip it out. Feel? You think feelings matter here? You think love changes anything in the world we live in? It changes everything, Vito said quietly, but his voice carried enough weight to make Bernardo stop pacing in circles and look at him. Say that again, my brother asked, dangerously calm now. Repeat what you just said. Vito took a deep breath, and I saw the decision form in his eyes, the choice being made even knowing all the consequences. I said it changes everything, because I love your sister, Bernardo. I love Claire in a way I've never loved anyone, and I know this breaks the code. I know this hurts you, but it's the truth. The punch came so fast none of us expected it. Bernardo hit Vito in the face with such force it made him stagger backward, hitting the desk before regaining his balance. Blood dripped from the corner of his mouth, but Vito didn't fight back, just stood there, accepting the punishment as if he felt he deserved it. Bernardo, no! I screamed, trying to put myself between them, but my brother pushed me aside with surprising care, considering the violence of the moment. You're going to choose, Bernardo said, completely ignoring my presence while staring at Vito. Now, here, her or our partnership. Her or the business. Her or everything we've built together over the last 10 years. Bernardo, you can't do this, I protested, but he kept ignoring me, his eyes fixed on Vito as if I didn't exist. Vito wiped the blood from his mouth with the back of his hand, and when he spoke, his voice was broken. Don't make me choose. Please, brother. Don't make me choose between you and her. I'm not your brother anymore. Bernardo spat the words like poison. Brothers don't do this. Brothers don't betray. So choose. Now. The silence that followed was deafening, and I saw Vito struggling internally, the conflict clear on his face. He looked at me, and there was so much pain in those dark eyes I felt my heart break. Vito began, but couldn't finish the sentence. He doesn't have to choose because I already chose, I shouted, finally making Bernardo look at me. I choose him. I choose Vito. And no matter what you do, that's not going to change. My brother stared at me as if seeing a stranger, and when he spoke, his voice was ice cold. Then you leave me no choice. He took his phone from his pocket and dialed a number, and my stomach sank when I realized what he was doing. Get the jet ready, Bernardo ordered, whoever was on the other end. Destination Rome. Departure in 3 hours. No, I whispered, shaking my head. Bernardo, no, you can't. I can and I will, he replied, already typing another message on his phone. You're going to Italy tomorrow morning, and you're staying there until I decide it's safe for you to come back, which might be never. You have no right, I screamed, feeling tears of rage and despair stream down my face. I'm an adult. You can't send me to another country against my will. I can and I will, Bernardo repeated, and there was a finality in the words that scared me. Either you go willingly, or I put you on that plane by force. Your choice. Bernardo, please. Vito finally spoke, and there was pleading in his voice. Don't do this to her. I'll leave. I'll dissolve the partnership. I'll leave New York. Just don't send her away. Too late, my brother said, turning his back on us. I trusted you with my life, Vito, with my family, with my sisters, and you broke that in the worst possible way. So no, you don't leave New York. You stay here and remember every day what you lost when you decided to break the code. He stopped at the door and looked back one last time, You have 2 hours to pack, Claire. The car will pick you up at home at 7. Don't try to run because I'll have men watching. I hate you, I screamed, but Bernardo had already left, leaving only the echo of my words in the empty office. Vito pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe, and I felt when his body started shaking with the force of the emotions he was holding back. I'm sorry, he whispered in my hair. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. It wasn't your fault, I replied, even knowing it was a lie. It was both our faults. We were equally responsible for thinking we could have this without consequences. I'll come get you, Vito promised, pulling back enough to hold my face and make me look at him. No matter how long it takes, no matter what I have to do, I'll come get you, Claire. What if he never lets me come back? Then I'll go to Italy, he said without hesitation. I'll give up everything here and come after you, because you're worth more than any business, more than any partnership, more than anything in this world. We kissed one last time, desperate and salty with our tears, and when he finally let me go and sent me home to pack, all I could think was that Bernardo had won. He had separated us, and I had no idea when or if I'd be able to come back. Chapter 5: Exile and Separation.
This isn't goodbye.
The flight to Rome took off at 9 in the morning, and I spent every second since Bernardo sent me away, begging, crying, making promises I knew I couldn't keep. Nothing worked. My brother stood firm in his decision, his face like stone as he watched me pack with my hands shaking so much I could barely fold the clothes properly. Bernardo, please. I tried for the 100th time when he showed up in my room at 6:30 in the morning to escort me to the car. Don't do this. I'll break up with him. I promise. Just don't send me away. Too late for promises, he replied, grabbing my suitcase and going down the stairs without looking back, as if looking would weaken his resolve. Florence was in the kitchen when we came down, and for the first time in my life I saw my mother truly furious with her son. She blocked Bernardo's path, her brown eyes shining with anger as she gripped his arm tightly. You have no right to do this to your sister, she said, her voice low but loaded with disappointment. You're not her father, Bernardo. You're her brother. I'm the man of the family, he replied, but there was a crack in his voice, as if the words themselves hurt coming out. And it's my responsibility to protect this family, even if it's from itself. Protect? Florence gave a humorless laugh, releasing his arm with a push. You're not protecting her. You're punishing her for loving someone. Your father, God rest his soul, was also a mob man. He had codes, had rules, but you know what he told me when we got married? Bernardo didn't answer, but stopped walking. He said that in the end, when everything falls apart, when businesses fail and partnerships break, all that will be left is family and love, my mother continued, and there were tears in her eyes now. He told me that true protection is letting the people you love be happy, even when you don't agree with their choices. This is different, Bernardo mumbled, but without conviction. Is it? Because it seems exactly the same to me, Florence shot back. Your father wanted to protect me too when we started dating. His family was against it. They said I wasn't good enough, that I came from the wrong side of town. He could have sent me away to protect me. But you know what he did? My brother finally looked at her. He chose to love me, she said simply. And they were the best 20 years of his life before he left us. So don't tell me you're protecting your sister when you're actually destroying her. But Bernardo had already closed himself off again, his expression returning to that mask of determination I knew so well. The car's waiting, was all he said, walking out the door without looking back. Rebecca came running down the stairs still in her pajamas, her hair messy and eyes red from crying so much. She'd spent the entire night with me, trying to console me while I packed my life into 2 large suitcases, and now she pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe. I'll talk to him, she promised against my shoulder. Every day. I'll make him see how wrong this is. I promise, Claire. It won't help, I replied, my voice coming out broken and tired. You know how he is when he decides something. Then I'll make him change his mind, Rebecca insisted, pulling back enough to look me in the eyes. Even if it takes months, even if it takes years, I won't give up. The flight was silent torture. Bernardo had sent 2 of his trusted men to escort me, ensuring I actually boarded and didn't try to run at the airport. They sat a few rows behind me, discreet, but always vigilant, and I spent the 9 hours looking out the window with silent tears streaming down my face. Vito had tried to call me 7 times before the flight took off, but Bernardo had confiscated my phone. The last thing I'd seen before handing it over was a message from him that said only, I'll come get you, I promise. But promises were easy to make and hard to keep when there was an entire ocean separating us. Rome was beautiful. In a way I hated. The apartment Bernardo had arranged was in Trastevere, a charming neighborhood full of cobblestone streets and cozy restaurants, and in any other circumstance I would have loved being there. But every beautiful corner, every golden sunset over the Tiber, every moment of beauty only reminded me that I was alone, banished, separated from the only man I'd ever truly loved. The weeks dragged on like months. Florence called me every day, telling me news from home, and trying to cheer me up with stories about Rebecca and her studies. My baby sister also called, always furious with Bernardo, always promising she'd make him change his mind. "He's miserable," Rebecca told me on a call 3 weeks after my arrival. "He won't admit it, but I see it. He barely sleeps, barely eats, just works and stares at the photo of you he has in his wallet." "Good," I replied bitterly. "I hope he stays miserable forever." "Claire," my sister sighed, "you need to understand he thinks he's doing the right thing. In his twisted mind, he's protecting you." "Protecting me from what? From the man I love, who would never do anything to hurt me." "Protecting you from the life that comes with loving that man," Rebecca said quietly. "From the danger, the violence, from everything that happened to Mom when she lost Dad. Bernardo remembers, Claire. He remembers how Mom almost died of grief." I had no answer for that, because she was right. Bernardo was 15 when our father was murdered in a deal gone wrong, and he'd seen firsthand what that kind of loss did to someone. But that didn't make the forced exile any less cruel. Vito didn't get in touch. No messages, no calls, no emails, and that hurt more than anything, because it meant either Bernardo was preventing him from talking to me, or worse, that Vito had given up, that he'd chosen the business, the partnership, the sacred code I'd asked him to break. "He's working non-stop," Rebecca told me a month later. "Gail told me Vito barely leaves the office, that he sleeps there, eats there, lives there, and that he's different, colder, more closed off, like a worse version of himself. He forgot about me," I whispered into the phone, feeling a new wave of tears threaten to fall. "No, Claire. Gail said it's the opposite, that Vito's like this precisely because he can't forget, that he's punishing himself for letting Bernardo send you away." But knowing that didn't make the separation any easier. I woke up every day in that beautiful apartment in Rome, looked at the city sprawling below, and all I felt was emptiness. I started taking Italian classes to pass the time, met some American expats who were also living in the city, but nothing filled the hole Vito had left in my chest. Florence called on a Thursday night, 6 weeks after my exile, and her voice was heavy with concern. "Honey, I need to tell you something about your brother." My stomach sank. "What happened?" "He and Vito had an ugly fight today. Physical. Gail had to separate them," she said, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "Vito demanded to know when you'd be able to come back. Bernardo said never. Vito said he'd go to Rome then. Bernardo said if he did that, the partnership was over." "And what did Vito say?" I asked, gripping the phone so hard my fingers went white. "He said he didn't care anymore, that he'd dissolve everything, pass the business to Gail, and come after you," Florence replied, and there was something like hope in her voice. "Bernardo hit him again, said if Vito did that, he'd never let you return to New York, that you'd be banished forever." I closed my eyes, feeling the weight of the impossible choice they were forcing Vito to make. And now they're not speaking. The partnership's hanging by a thread, and we're all paying the price for your brother's stupid pride. That night, alone in the apartment in Rome, I wrote a letter, not to Vito, because I knew Bernardo would never let it reach him, but to Gail, asking him to deliver a message. Tell him not to come. Tell him I'll be okay. Tell him he can't throw everything away because of me. And tell him I still love him, even from afar, even knowing we might never get to have this the way we wanted. Gail's response came a week later, in a quick call he made hidden from his brother. "He read your message," the boy said, "and you know what he did? Ripped it up, and said you don't get to decide for him, that if you think he's going to give up that easily, you don't really know him." "Gail, he can't," I argued. Bernardo will have to accept it eventually," Gail cut me off. "Because Vito's not bluffing, Claire. He really is going to dissolve the partnership and come after you. He's just waiting for the right moment." But the weeks turned into months, and the right moment never came. Bernardo maintained his iron position. Vito worked like a man possessed to hide the pain, and I withered away in Rome, counting the days and losing hope a little more each morning I woke up alone. Florence was right when she said our father wanted to protect, but that the best years of his life were by her side, and Bernardo was making the same mistake, only in reverse, thinking that separating people protected them when it actually only destroyed them. But convincing my stubborn brother of that seemed as impossible as swimming across the ocean to get back home, to get back to Vito, to get back to the life they'd stolen from me. Chapter 6. Real Danger.
He will come! And I'm going to make you pay.
And the call. 3 months. 90 days exactly since Bernardo put me on that plane, and I'd stopped counting the hours I spent looking out the window of the apartment in Rome, waiting for a change that never came. The routine had become mechanical. Wake up, make coffee, go to Italian classes, come back, have dinner alone, sleep. Repeat. The 2 guards Bernardo had left with me were discreet, but always present, a type of invisible prison that constantly reminded me I wasn't there by my own choice. They followed me when I went out, stayed outside the apartment when I was inside, and reported my every move back to New York. It was on a Tuesday, 3 months and 4 days after the exile, that everything changed. I'd gone out to buy bread at the corner bakery, a 5-minute walk I took every day, so routine the guards barely paid attention. The street was busy with tourists and locals enjoying the autumn sun, and I was distracted looking at an antique shop window when I felt the hand on my arm. "Claire Esposito," a male voice said in English with a heavy Italian accent. "You're coming with us." Quietly, I turned and found 2 men I didn't know, but the way they were positioned, blocking my exit, and the suspicious bulge under one's coat told me everything I needed to know. My heart raced, but years growing up in a mob family had taught me not to show fear. "You have 5 seconds to let me go before my guards show up," I warned, keeping my voice steady even with panic growing in my chest. The man smiled, and it was a cold smile that made my blood freeze. "Your guards are busy at the moment. Something about flat tires and a convenient distraction." Shit. I tried to scream, but his hand covered my mouth so fast the sound died in my throat. They dragged me into a side alley, and I fought with everything I had, kicking and trying to bite. But it was 2 against 1, and they were much stronger than me. "The Russos send their regards," the second man whispered in my ear, as they pushed me into a black van waiting with the engine running. "You're going to be our insurance that Bernardo Esposito will learn to respect territories." The door slammed, darkness enveloped me, and the last thing I thought before feeling the prick of a needle in my arm was that Bernardo had been right. I'd been used as a bargaining chip, exactly as he'd feared. Bernardo was in the office at the Caruso mansion when his phone rang with an unknown number. He almost didn't answer, too tired after another day of tense meetings, where he and Vito barely looked at each other, the partnership functioning only because both were too professional to let the business completely fall apart. But something made him answer. "Esposito," he said, his voice tired. "We have your sister," a voice said in Italian, and Bernardo felt the world stop. "Claire Esposito, very much alive for now. If you want her back, you'll have to negotiate." The phone almost fell from his hand. "What? Where is she?" Calm down, the man on the other end said with false cordiality. "She's fine. A little scared, but fine. How long she stays that way depends on you." Vito, who was on the other side of the office reviewing contracts, looked up when he heard the panic in Bernardo's voice. His eyes narrowed, his entire body going tense with instant alert. "What do you want?" Bernardo asked, already on his feet, pacing in circles as he ran his free hand through his hair. "We'll discuss that in person. You have 24 hours to get to Rome. Alone, or your little sister starts losing fingers," the voice said casually, as if discussing the weather. "Oh, and Esposito, don't even think about involving the police. We have eyes everywhere." The call dropped. Bernardo stood frozen, phone still in hand, his face completely white. When he finally looked at Vito, there was pure terror in his eyes, all the anger and distance from the last months momentarily forgotten in the face of panic. "What happened?" Vito asked, already crossing the office. "Claire," Bernardo managed to say, his voice coming out strangled. "They took Claire, the Russos, in Italy." Vito went completely still for 2 seconds, processing the information, and when he spoke again, his voice was dangerously calm. "When? Now, a few minutes ago. They gave me 24 hours to go to Rome." Bernardo ran his hands over his face, panic starting to take over. "Alone. It's an obvious trap, but I can't. She's my sister. Vito, my sister." The silence that followed was loaded with 3 months of unresolved resentment, harsh words exchanged, a broken friendship. Vito looked at Bernardo for a long moment, and when he spoke, there was no warmth in his voice, only cold efficiency. "Call your guards in Rome. Find out where they were, what they saw, any details," Vito ordered, already grabbing his own phone. "I'll activate my contacts in Italy. See if anyone knows where the Russos operate." Bernardo looked at him with surprise. You're going to help me? She's my partner's sister," Vito said, deliberately neutral, maintaining emotional distance even when his eyes said otherwise. "Of course I'm going to help." But both knew it was a lie. Vito wasn't doing this because Claire was his partner's sister. He was doing it because it was Claire, because 3 months of separation hadn't changed absolutely anything about what he felt. In the next 2 hours, the mansion transformed into an operations center. Gale showed up when Vito called, bringing with him 3 of the best men from the security team. Maps were spread out, calls were made, information was compiled with military efficiency. Bernardo was visibly falling apart, pacing in circles and running his hands through his hair repeatedly as he tried to think, plan, but the panic was winning. It was Vito who grabbed him by the arm and forced him to sit. "Stop," he ordered. "You're no good like this. Breathe, focus. How can you stay so calm?" Bernardo exploded, standing up again. "They have my sister. Because panicking won't bring her back," Vito replied with a calm that seemed almost unnatural. "So you're going to control yourself. Help me plan this right. And we're going to get her." Bernardo looked at him, really looked, and saw something in Vito's eyes he couldn't fully identify. There was control there, yes, but underneath there was something cold and deadly, a fury so intense it was being compressed into pure determination. "How do you know where the Russos operate in Rome?" Bernardo asked suddenly, realizing Vito was coordinating with contacts he didn't know. "Because I spent the last 3 months mapping their every move," Vito replied, without looking at him, marking positions on a map. "Since they tried to grab Claire that time in New York, I knew they'd try again." You were watching her?" There was something between accusation and gratitude in Bernardo's voice. "I was protecting her," Vito corrected, finally looking at him, from afar, without her knowing. "But yes, because you could take away my right to be near her, but you couldn't take away my need to keep her safe." Bernardo opened his mouth to respond, but Gail interrupted. "Found something. Abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Rome. Property registered under a shell company linked to the Russos." "How many exits?" Vito asked immediately. 3. Main, side, and one in the back that leads to the river. "Then we cover them all," Vito decided, already marking positions on the map. "Team A in front, B in back, C on the side." Bernardo goes in front like they asked, keeps them distracted. "On my signal, we go in." "What if they hurt her when they see I'm not alone?" Bernardo asked, his voice breaking. "They won't have time," Vito assured, and there was absolute certainty there. "We go in fast, clean the place out, and leave with her. Simple. Nothing simple when it comes to the Russos," Bernardo argued. "Then we make it simple," Vito replied, already turning to coordinate with the men. "Call your mother. Let her know we're going to get Claire, but don't give details. The fewer people who know, the better." Bernardo hesitated for a moment, looking at the man who had been his best friend, who he'd pushed away out of pride and stupid codes, and who was now risking everything to help. Later, Vito cut him off, knowing what was coming. "We'll talk later. Right now we focus on getting her out." The call to Florence was brutal. Bernardo had to listen to his mother panic, cry, ask how this happened when she was supposedly safe in Italy. Rebecca grabbed the phone at some point, and her voice was cold, in a way he'd never heard before. "You did this," she accused. "You sent her there. You put her in danger." "Rebecca, bring her back," his younger sister ordered. "Bring Claire back, Bernardo, or I'll never forgive you." The line went dead, and Bernardo stood staring at the phone with the weight of guilt crushing his shoulders. Vito appeared beside him a few minutes later. "Jet's ready. We leave in 20 minutes, he informed, and then, lower. "She's going to be okay. We won't let anything happen to her." "You can't promise that," Bernardo said tiredly. "I can and I will," Vito shot back. "Because I don't fail when it comes to her. Never have. Not going to start now." The flight to Rome was tense and silent. Bernardo tried to sleep and couldn't, kept looking out the window and seeing only his own guilt reflected in the dark glass. Vito spent the entire flight on the phone, coordinating with contacts in Italy, confirming positions, checking equipment. "How did you build this whole network?" Bernardo asked at some point, unable to stay silent any longer. "These contacts, this information. You don't do this in 3 months. You do when you don't sleep," Vito replied simply. "When you spend every waking minute obsessed with keeping one person safe even when she's on the other side of the ocean. You really," Bernardo began, but stopped, not knowing how to finish the sentence. "Yes," Vito said, understanding the unasked question. "I really, always. You knew that. You were just too blind to see it." "I know," Bernardo admitted quietly, but before he could say more, Gail called with an update, and the moment passed. When they landed in Rome, the sun was starting to rise, painting the sky pink and gold, in an obscenely beautiful way, considering the horror they were about to face. 3 vans waited at the private hangar, men already equipped and ready, and Vito checked every weapon, every vest, every detail with military precision. "Remember," he said to Bernardo as he put on the bulletproof vest. "You go in, keep them talking. We surround the building. Wait for the opportunity, and go in. You don't make any move until my signal." "What if they realize there are people outside?" "They won't," Vito guaranteed. "My men are the best. Discreet, silent, lethal." "Vito," Bernardo called when the other was already turning. "Thank you for doing this. After everything I said we'll talk later," Vito cut him off, but there was no real anger in his voice. "Right now, let's go get your sister." The drive to the warehouse was made in silence loaded with tension. Bernardo was in the first van with Vito and 2 men, the other 2 following at a safe distance. When the building appeared on the horizon, abandoned and decaying exactly as Gail had described, Bernardo felt his stomach turn. "She's in there," he said, more to himself than to anyone. "My little sister's in there with those animals, and in 10 minutes she'll be out here, safe," Vito promised. "Trust me." And the craziest thing was that, despite everything, despite the 3 months of silence and resentment, Bernardo trusted, because if there was one thing he knew with absolute certainty, it was that Vito Caruso wasn't going to let anything happen to Claire, even if it cost him his own life. Chapter 7. Rescue and Alpha Declaration.
I'm here.
Vito!
You're safe now.
I woke up with my head throbbing, and the taste of blood in my mouth. The darkness gradually gave way to a dim light, coming from a dirty bulb hanging from the ceiling, and it took a few seconds for my brain to process where I was. Peeling concrete walls, damp floor, the smell of mold, and something worse I didn't want to identify, a basement. I was in a basement somewhere in Rome, with my hands tied behind my back, and my ankles bound to a metal chair. Panic tried to take over, but I forced my breathing to stay controlled, trying to remember everything Bernardo had taught me years ago about kidnapping situations. Stay calm, observe everything, look for exits, don't show fear. There were 2 men in the corner of the basement, smoking and talking in Italian, in a dialect I could barely understand, and a third was sitting in a chair near the stairs, cleaning a gun with methodical movements that made my stomach turn. "She's awake," one of them announced when he saw me moving, and the one with the gun stood up and came toward me. "Welcome back, Principessa," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, his voice loaded with malice that made every muscle in my body tense. "Your brother should be on his way. I hope he values you enough to do what we asked. He's going to kill all of you," I managed to say, my voice coming out hoarse but firm, refusing to let them see the fear running through my veins. "You know that, right? No matter what happens to me, Bernardo will hunt each one down," and the slap came fast, making my head turn to the side with enough force for me to see stars, and the taste of blood intensified in my mouth as I accidentally bit my lower lip. "Shut up," the man ordered, leaning his face too close to mine. "Nobody asked for your opinion." I spit blood on the floor at his feet and looked up with all the anger I felt burning in my chest. "You just signed your death sentence," I said, maintaining eye contact, even when he raised his hand to hit me again. But before he could, an explosion shook the entire building, so strong that pieces of concrete fell from the ceiling and the lamp swung violently. The sound of breaking glass came from above, immediately followed by screams and gunshots that echoed through the thin walls of the warehouse, and the 3 men in the basement immediately grabbed their guns, running to the stairs while shouting orders in Italian I couldn't fully understand. My heart raced in my chest as I fought against the ropes binding my wrists, ignoring the pain when the rough fiber cut my skin and made blood drip down my fingers. Bernardo. It had to be Bernardo. He'd come. More shots echoed through the building, closer now, voices shouting in English mixed with Italian, and then heavy footsteps coming down the stairs made me freeze, praying it was rescue and not more captors coming to use me as a human shield. And then Vito appeared at the base of the stairs, and I'd never seen anything so beautiful and terrifying in my life. He was dressed all in black, with a bulletproof vest that had blood stains that clearly weren't his, a gun still in his right hand, and the expression on his face when he saw me was such an intense mix of relief and murderous fury. It left me breathless. His eyes traveled over my body quickly, cataloging every injury, every bruise, the way I was tied up, and I saw the exact moment his anger went from intense to absolutely deadly. He crossed the basement in 4 long strides, dropping to his knees in front of me with such force it should have hurt, but he didn't even seem to notice, as he was already pulling out a knife and starting to cut the ropes binding my ankles. "Are you okay? Are you hurt? Where does it hurt?" he asked urgently, each word coming out fast while his hands worked on the bindings, trembling slightly from adrenaline or emotion or both. I think I'm okay," I managed to say, but my voice came out weaker than I wanted, brittle at the edges in a way that revealed exactly how scared I'd been. Vito cut the last rope, and immediately his hands were on my face, on my shoulders, running down my arms as he checked for injuries, his dark eyes searching mine with an intensity that made my chest tighten. "They hurt you." It wasn't a question. It was a statement loaded with violent promises, as his fingers gently brushed the bruise I could feel forming on my face where the man had hit me. "They put their hands on you." "Vito, I'm fine. I started. But then everything I'd held back, all the fear and terror of the last hours finally came out in uncontrolled sobs that shook my entire body. Vito pulled me into a hug so tight I could barely breathe, one hand holding my head against his chest, while the other squeezed my waist, as if wanting to fuse me into him, protect me from the entire world with his own body. "Never again," he said against my hair, his voice hoarse with emotion I could feel vibrating in his chest. "Never again are you far from me, Claire. Never again. I don't care about anything, about codes, about rules, about your brother, about absolutely nothing. You stay with me now. You understand me? You never leave my side again. Vito." I tried to say something, but he kissed me, urgent and desperate, full of all the fear he'd felt of losing me, and I responded with equal intensity, my hands tangling in his tactical shirt as if he were the only real thing in the world. "Boss!" One of his men's voice came from the stairs. Urgent. "We need to leave. Now." Neighbors might have called the police. Vito lifted me in his arms, as if I weighed absolutely nothing, holding me against his chest as he was already climbing the stairs with firm, quick steps. It was only when we reached the ground floor of the warehouse that I saw the real extent of the violence that had happened. Bodies on the floor, some of the Russo men, and some I didn't recognize. Broken glass everywhere, bullet marks on the walls, and Bernardo standing near the exit with his face stained with blood and an expression that mixed relief and horror when he saw me in Vito's arms. "Claire," he said, running toward us, and when he got close, I saw the tears in his eyes. "My God, did they hurt you?" "Rib," I mumbled, because the pain had started registering now that the adrenaline was passing. A sharp stab in my left side every time I breathed deeply. "I think they broke it when they threw me in the van." And my face, the expression that passed over Vito's face was absolutely murderous, his arms tightening around me with extra care as he looked at Bernardo with a coldness I'd never seen directed at his best friend. "The ones who did this?" he asked, and there was something deadly in the calm of his voice. "Dead," one of his men answered from the other side of the warehouse, dragging a body. "All of them, like you ordered." "Good," was all Vito said, and then he was already walking to the exit, carrying me as if I were made of glass, Bernardo running beside us with a devastated expression. The trip to the hospital was a blur of growing pain and urgent voices. I kept going in and out of consciousness in the back seat of the SUV, with Vito holding me against him and Bernardo driving like a madman through the streets of Rome while shouting into the phone in Italian, organizing our arrival. I remember hearing Vito talking quietly to me, saying everything was going to be okay, that he was there, that no one would hurt me again, and his hand never left my hair, stroking gently, as if he needed the physical contact to make sure I was alive and breathing. At the hospital, doctors and nurses appeared in seconds, clearly expecting our arrival, a gurney already prepared and equipment ready. They tried to get Vito away from my side to examine me, 2 nurses literally blocking his path, but he simply pushed them aside with an authority that didn't accept arguments. "I'm staying." It wasn't a request, it was an absolute order. No one takes me away from her side, no one. The doctors exchanged looks, but were smart enough not to argue with a man who still had blood on his clothes and an expression that promised violence if anyone contradicted him. Vito stood next to the gurney holding my hand while they x-rayed my chest and examined my face. His jaw clenched so hard I could see the muscle pulsing under his skin every time I made some sound of pain. 2 broken ribs, the doctor announced in English after reviewing the images that appeared on the screen next to the bed, pointing to the thin lines I couldn't see properly. "Several deep bruises, cut on the forehead that will need 4 stitches, cut lip, but nothing permanent." She was lucky considering— "Lucky," Vito repeated, and the word came out loaded with so much sarcasm and anger that the doctor immediately stopped talking. "She was kidnapped, beaten, and traumatized. That's not luck, doctor. That's my failure to keep her safe." "Vito, it wasn't your fault," I tried to say, but he shook his head, still looking at some distant point as if fighting an internal war. The doctor wisely didn't respond, just nodded to the nurses to prepare the room while Vito finally, reluctantly, released my hand to let them work on the stitches. But he didn't leave, stood 2 meters away with his arms crossed and eyes fixed on me, watching every movement of the healthcare professionals as if he didn't trust anyone to touch me. When they finally put me in a private room, cleaned and bandaged and full of pain medication that left me floating in a pleasant fog, Vito sat in the chair next to the bed and took my hand again, intertwining our fingers with a delicacy that completely contrasted with the violence I knew he was capable of. "Mess with her, mess with me," he said quietly, more to himself than to me. "That's the message going out from here. Anyone, any family, any organization that thinks about using Claire Esposito as a bargaining chip will know it means total war with Vito Caruso." "You don't need to," I started, but he put a finger on my lips, gently silencing me. "I need to, because you're mine, Claire, and I protect what's mine with everything I have, with everything I am," he said, and there was an absolute finality in those words that left no room for argument. The room door opened, and Bernardo entered, having clearly showered and changed clothes somewhere, because there was no more blood on him. He stopped when he saw Vito holding my hand, and something passed over his face that I couldn't fully identify. Can I talk to her?" my brother asked, hesitant in a way I'd never seen in him. "I'll get coffee," Vito said, standing up. But before leaving, he leaned down and kissed my forehead with such tenderness I felt tears prick my eyes. "Back in 5 minutes. You yell if you need me." When he left, Bernardo came to the bed and sat where Vito had been, and it was only when I saw the tears streaming down my brother's face that I realized how much he'd aged in the last 3 months. There were new lines around his eyes, a weight on his shoulders that wasn't there before. "Claire, he started, but his voice broke and he had to stop, take a deep breath, try again. "I'm sorry, for everything, for sending you away, for putting you in danger, for being too proud and stupid to see what was right in front of me." "Bernardo," I tried to say something, but he shook his head. "No, let me talk. I need to talk," he insisted, wiping his face with the back of his hand. I thought I was protecting you. I really did. I thought separating you from him, sending you far from the violence and danger of our life, would keep you safe. But I just put you directly in the path of the danger I swore I was avoiding. It wasn't your fault, the Russos. I started, but he cut me off again. It was completely my fault. Because if you'd stayed in New York with Vito, he would have kept you safe. He would have seen the Russos coming from miles away. But I took you out of his protection because of my stupid pride and the idiotic code I valued more than your happiness, Bernardo said, each word coming out like a painful confession. Voices came from the hallway outside the room, and I recognized Vito's talking to someone, probably a doctor or nurse. Bernardo looked at the door, and then back at me. I need to tell you something. Something I saw today that finally made me understand. What? I asked, curious despite the exhaustion and pain. When we entered that warehouse, the Russo men tried to use you as a shield. They tried to grab you and threatened to kill you if we didn't back off, Bernardo said, and his eyes went distant, as if reliving the moment. And Claire, I saw Vito completely lose control. I'd never, in 10 years of friendship, seen him like that. He killed the 3 men who were near you in less than 30 seconds, with his bare hands, and then went down to that basement, like it was the only thing that mattered in the entire world. I said nothing, just held my brother's hand and let him continue. And I realized he wasn't doing this because you're my sister. He wasn't doing it for me, for the partnership, for the code. He was doing it because you're his. Because he loves you in a way I didn't understand until I saw it with my own eyes, Bernardo said, his voice getting firmer now. You're the most important thing to him. More than business, more than the mob, more than his own life. And I was an idiot not to see that before. The room door opened and Vito came back, stopping when he saw the scene of Bernardo holding my hand, and both of us visibly emotional. Sorry, I can come back later. He started to turn, but Bernardo called him. Vito, stay. I need to talk to you too, my brother said, standing up from the chair. The 2 men looked at each other for a long moment, years of friendship and months of hurt hanging in the air between them, and then Bernardo took the first step. You really love her, don't you? It's not just attraction or lust or anything superficial. You really love my sister. Vito didn't hesitate for even a second. More than my life, he replied simply, as if it were the most obvious truth in the world. I always have, since long before you found out, and I'll keep loving her until my last day. Bernardo nodded slowly, processing, and then did something that completely surprised me. He extended his hand to Vito. Forgiveness, for everything, for the pride, for doubting you, for separating you two, and especially forgiveness for not seeing that you were always exactly what she needed. Vito looked at the extended hand, then at Bernardo's face, searching for some sign of falseness or manipulation, and finding nothing but genuine sincerity. He shook my brother's hand, and when he spoke, there was emotion in his voice too. Thank you for finally trusting me with her. It's not trust, Bernardo corrected, releasing the hand but maintaining eye contact. It's recognition that she was never mine to give or deny. She's her own first, and she chose you, and I respect that choice now. The 2 men looked at each other, and then Bernardo pulled Vito into a quick hug, patting his back the way men do when they want to express emotion but don't know how. When they separated, my brother turned to me with a small, sad smile. She's yours now, Bernardo said to Vito, but looking at me, officially, completely. You take care of her, protect her, make her happy. And Claire, he turned completely to me. Forgiveness for wasting 3 months you could have had together. Forgiveness for letting my pride matter more than your happiness. And forgiveness for only learning the lesson after almost losing you. You're an idiot, I managed to say through the tears now flowing freely. But you're my idiot brother. And I love you even when I want to kill you. Bernardo laughed wetly, wiped his own eyes, and kissed my forehead before heading to the door. I'll call Mom, tell her you're okay, and let you two have a moment. When the door closed behind him, Vito returned to the chair at my side, taking my hand again and bringing it to his lips to kiss each finger separately. Did you hear? He asked quietly. Every word, I admitted. And he's right, about everything, including about you being mine, he teased. But there was seriousness underneath the playfulness, especially about that, I replied, pulling him closer until I could touch his face. I was always yours, Vito Caruso, even when you fought against it, even when my brother tried to separate us. Always. He kissed me then, soft and reverent, as if I were something precious he'd almost lost, and now held with extra care. And when we separated, he rested his forehead against mine, eyes closed. Never again, he promised again. Never again, you far from me. When you leave here, you come with me to New York. Live in my house, sleep in my bed, stay where I can see you, protect you, keep you safe. Understood, understood, I replied, smiling despite the pain and exhaustion. And I wouldn't want it any other way. And for the first time in 3 long, torturous months, lying in that hospital bed with broken ribs, but with the man I loved holding my hand, and my brother finally giving us his blessing, I felt like I was finally going home, for real. Chapter 8. Coming Home and Acceptance.
I'm safe now. I'm safe now.
The flight back to New York happened 3 days later, when the doctors finally released me with a huge list of restrictions and recommendations that Vito meticulously wrote down in a notebook, as if he were studying for a test. Broken ribs took 6 to 8 weeks to heal completely, no sudden movements, no lifting weights, pain medication every 4 hours, and absolute rest. "I can take care of myself," I argued when Vito practically carried me from the hospital room to the wheelchair a nurse had brought, completely ignoring my protest that I could walk. "No chance," he replied simply, pushing the chair down the hallway with Bernardo walking beside us carrying my small suitcase. "You're staying at my house, in my room, where I can make sure you're following all the doctor's orders." "Vito, I'm an adult, and I'm the man who almost lost you 3 days ago," he cut me off, stopping the chair to crouch down to eye level with me. "So, at least for the next few weeks, you're going to give me this control. Please, Claire, for my sanity." There was something so vulnerable in that request, so much raw emotion in his dark eyes, that I couldn't argue anymore. "Okay," I agreed quietly, "but only for a few weeks. We'll see," he murmured, kissing my forehead before going back to pushing the chair. The private jet was waiting at the same hangar we'd rushed out from days ago to rescue me, and Gail was there too, having flown to Rome the previous morning to help coordinate the cleanup of the operation. When he saw me, his face lit up with genuine relief. "Claire, thank God you're okay," he said, coming to hug me carefully, aware of my injuries. "Rebecca's going crazy in New York wanting news. She made me promise I'd take 1,000 photos to prove you're alive." "Take as many as she wants," I replied, smiling despite the pain that still throbbed in my side every time I breathed too deeply. "How is she? And Mom?" "Your mother is relieved, worried, anxious to see you," Gail replied, exchanging a look with Bernardo I couldn't interpret. "And Rebecca is, well, being Rebecca. She's already started planning a welcome party that your brother has forbidden 3 times. During the flight, I slept most of the time, lying on one of the reclining sofas with my head in Vito's lap, while he worked on his laptop with one hand and kept the other in my hair, stroking gently. I woke up a few times and found him always there, always vigilant, as if afraid I'd disappear if he blinked. "You need to sleep too," I mumbled one of those times, looking up and seeing the dark circles under his eyes. "I'll sleep when you're safe in New York," he replied, but the way his fingers trembled slightly in my hair told me how much adrenaline and caffeine he was using to stay awake. It was late at night when we landed in New York, and an SUV was already waiting at the private hangar with 2 of Vito's guards. The Caruso mansion was lit up when we arrived, all the windows shining as if waiting for our arrival, and when the main door opened, Florence came running down the stairs with Rebecca right behind her. "My girl," my mother cried, pulling me into a hug so tight I groaned in pain involuntarily, making her pull back immediately with wide eyes. Sorry, dear. I forgot about the ribs." "It's okay, Mom," I assured, holding her hand. "I'm fine." I'm home. Rebecca was crying openly, not even trying to hide the tears as she hugged me with extreme care, as if I were made of glass. "I thought, when Bernardo called saying they took you, I thought I was going to lose you," she sobbed against my shoulder. "Never do this to me again. You hear? Never again." "It wasn't exactly a choice, Becca," I tried to joke, but she didn't find it funny, just hugged me tighter for a few more seconds before pulling away and wiping her face. Vito appeared at my side with that silent but absolute presence he always had, placing a hand on my waist in a possessive and protective way. "She needs to rest," he announced to everyone, but mainly looking at Florence. The doctor said absolute rest for at least a week. My mother studied the way he held me, the way his eyes didn't leave me for even a second, and something soft and understanding passed over her face. "Of course, you must be exhausted. Bernardo told me that you're staying here? At the mansion? Claire will stay in my room," Vito said without hesitation, without shame, stating the facts clearly. "Where I can take care of her and make sure she's safe." I expected some negative reaction, some comment about propriety or tradition, but Florence just nodded as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Good. She'll need someone with her all the time for the first few weeks. Broken ribs are tricky." "Mom," I started, surprised by such easy acceptance, but she just smiled and touched my face tenderly. "We'll talk later, dear. Now go rest." Vito's room was huge and masculine, all decorated in dark gray and black tones with heavy wooden furniture that probably cost more than a car. He helped me lie down on the king-size bed with extreme care, arranging pillows around me until he was satisfied I was comfortable, and then sat on the edge of the bed just looking at me. "What?" I asked, taking his hand. "It still doesn't seem real," he admitted quietly. "That you're here, that I brought you back, that you're safe." "I'm here," I assured, pulling him closer until he lay down beside me carefully so as not to hurt me. "And I'm not going anywhere." He hugged me gently, his body curving around mine protectively, and for the first time in days, I felt him really relax, the muscles that had been tense since the kidnapping finally releasing as his breathing calmed. "Sleep," I whispered. "I'm safe. You can sleep." And he slept finally, with his face buried in my hair, and his arms holding me as if I were the most precious thing in the world. I woke up the next morning with sun coming through the heavy curtains and the smell of coffee coming from somewhere nearby. Vito was no longer in bed, but I could hear his voice coming from the attached bathroom, speaking quietly on the phone in Italian. I got up carefully, testing how much it hurt, and managed to get to the bathroom door without needing help. He was standing in front of the mirror in just sweatpants, his bare chest revealing defined muscles and some old scars I'd traced with my fingers in stolen moments. And when he saw me in the reflection, he hung up the phone immediately. "You should have called me to help you get up," he said, coming to me in 2 long strides. "I managed on my own," I replied, but let him guide me back to bed anyway, because I knew he needed this, needed to feel like he was taking care of me. The morning passed in a pleasant fog of pain medication and constant attention. Vito didn't leave the room except to get food, and even then always left someone trustworthy watching the door as if expecting enemies to jump through the windows at any moment. It was mid-afternoon when Florence knocked on the door, entering with a tray of tea and cookies she'd made herself. "Can I steal my daughter for a few minutes?" she asked Vito with that gentle smile she always had. Vito looked at me, checking if I was okay with it, and when I nodded, he kissed my forehead and left the room, closing the door behind him. My mother sat on the edge of the bed, serving me tea with milk the way I'd liked since childhood, and we stayed in comfortable silence for a few minutes before she spoke. "Your father would have liked him," she said finally, taking her own cup and looking at the door Vito had gone through. "Not at first, of course. At first he would have done exactly what Bernardo did. Forbidden, separated you, cited the code 1,000 times. Mom," I started, but she raised her hand, gently silencing me. "Let me finish, dear. This is important," Florence said, turning to look me in the eyes. "When I married your father, I knew exactly what I was getting into. I knew about the dangerous life, the sleepless nights, the constant fear that something could happen to him. My family warned me, begged me not to marry a mob man." I hadn't heard this story before, and listened fascinated as she continued. "But I loved him, Claire. Loved him in a way that made all the fear, all the danger worth it. And you know what he told me on our 10th wedding anniversary?" she asked, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "He said the best moments of his life weren't territory conquests or successful deals. They were moments with me. You 3 being born. Sunday mornings having coffee in bed. Simple things that made everything worthwhile. I miss him," I admitted, feeling my own chest tighten with the memory of my father who had left too soon. "Me too. Every day," Florence agreed, wiping away a tear that escaped. "But you know what I don't regret? Not one day we spent together. Not the moments of fear. Not the nights awake waiting for him to come home. Because he loved me, Claire, and I loved him. And that love was worth every second of uncertainty." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Because I see the same thing in Vito's eyes when he looks at you. That absolute, unconditional love. The kind that makes men move mountains and face armies," she said, taking my hand. "And I know you feel the same for him. So don't let fear or code or anything else get in the way. Your father wanted you safe, yes, but more than that, he wanted you happy. And Vito Caruso makes you happy in a way I haven't seen you be in years. Bernardo finally understood that," I told her. "When he rescued me, he gave us his blessing." Florence smiled, radiant and relieved. "Thank God. That stubborn boy finally pulled his head out of his ass." I laughed, surprised by the curse coming from my always elegant mother, and she laughed with me, the moment light and perfect despite everything we'd been through. When she left, Vito returned immediately, as if he'd been waiting on the other side of the door the whole time. "Is everything okay?" he asked, coming to sit beside me. "It's perfect," I assured. "My mom loves you, officially. Good to know I have her approval," he said with a small smile. "Now I just need to convince your younger sister that I'm good enough for you," as if she'd heard her name being mentioned. Rebecca knocked on the door 2 seconds later, entering with Gail right behind her. My sister came straight to the bed, jumping beside me carefully, but with all the teenage energy I'd missed. "Finally!" she practically shouted, taking my hand and Vito's and joining them dramatically. "Finally, I can openly ship you two without Bernardo shooting daggers at me with his eyes. Do you have any idea how long I spent keeping your secret?" "Rebecca," I started, but she was in full excitement mode now. "No, seriously. I saw your first kiss in the library months ago and had to pretend I didn't see it. Had to put up with Bernardo being an idiot. But now," she turned to Vito with a pointed finger, "now you have the official approval of her favorite sister to marry her and make beautiful babies that I'm going to spoil completely." "Rebecca," Vito and I said at the same time, but Gail was laughing in the corner of the room. "What? I'm just telling the truth." She defended herself, but was smiling. Then she turned to Gail with that look I knew well. "And when I turn 18, Gail and I are going to, when you grow up." Gail cut her off quickly, but was blushing. "You still have months before you turn 18, Becca." "But when I do," she insisted, moving closer to him with that confidence only teenage girls in love have. "You're finally going to admit you feel something for me?" Gail looked at Vito as if asking for help, but my boyfriend just shrugged, clearly amused by his younger brother's discomfort. We'll talk about this when you're 18, Gail finally said, and Rebecca gave a squeal of victory, as if that were a definite yes. Later that night, when the house finally quieted, and it was just Vito and me in the dark room, he hugged me carefully and whispered in my ear, "Tomorrow I'm making an announcement, official, to all the families." "What kind of announcement?" I asked, turning my head to look at him in the dim light coming through the window. "That you're my Donna now," he said simply. "That Claire Esposito is under my official protection. That anyone who tries to use you, hurt you, or threaten you will answer directly to me, and that soon you'll be Claire Caruso." My heart raced in my chest. "Vito, not now," he gently cut me off. "You're still recovering, but soon when you're better, I'm going to do this right. Ring, proposal, everything. And then we'll get married, and you officially become mine in every possible way." "I'm already yours," I whispered back. "I always have been." "I know," he agreed, kissing me tenderly. "But now the whole world will know too." And as I fell asleep in his arms, safe and loved, and finally truly home, all I could think was that it had been worth it. Every tear, every day of separation, every moment of fear. Because in the end, I had Vito, I had my family back, and I had a future ahead that shone brighter than I could have imagined. Chapter 9. Enemies Pay and Love Wins.
It's finally over.
Good job, hey.
2 weeks after the rescue, when my ribs hurt less and I could breathe deeply without groaning in pain, Vito called me into his office with an expression that mixed satisfaction and something darker. "The Russos," he said simply, sliding a thick folder across the desk to me. "Eliminated. All of them. Every man who participated in your kidnapping, everyone who knew and didn't stop it, every leader who gave the order. Wiped off the map." I opened the folder and saw reports, photos, dates. A meticulous operation that had taken weeks of planning and execution. "Vito, no one touches Caruso family," he said, and there was absolute finality in those words. "That's the message that was sent to every organization on the East Coast. You're mine, Claire, and messing with you is signing a death sentence." I closed the folder without looking further, knowing I didn't want to see the details. "So it's over?" "It's over," he confirmed, coming around the desk and pulling me into a hug. "Now we can focus on what matters, on our future." And that's exactly what we did. Rebecca took over the wedding planning with an enthusiasm that bordered on mania, showing up at the mansion every day with magazines, fabric samples, and increasingly elaborate ideas. "It's going to be perfect," she declared for the 1,000th time, spreading decoration photos on the living room table while Florence and I tried to keep up with her pace. "Becca, dear, maybe we could simplify a bit," Florence tried to suggest, but my sister cut her off with a determined look. "No, Claire spent 3 months in forced exile, was kidnapped, almost died, and is finally marrying the love of her life. This will be perfect, or I'll die trying." Vito walked into the room at that moment, stopped when he saw the chaos of papers and samples, and wisely turned around. "I'll come back when the war zone is over," he muttered, but he was smiling. It was on a Thursday afternoon that Bernardo showed up in Vito's office, and from the reports Gail gave me later, the conversation was loaded with emotion neither of them would admit to feeling. "I wanted to ask you something," Bernardo said, unusually hesitant. "At the wedding, have you chosen your best man yet?" Vito looked at him with genuine surprise. "I thought it was obvious. Of course it's you. After everything I did, you're my brother." Vito cut him off. "Not by blood, but in everything that matters. You made a mistake, yes, but you fixed it, and Claire wouldn't want anyone else walking her down the aisle." Bernardo was silent for a long moment before speaking again. "Take care of her better than I did. Please. Always," Vito promised. The afternoon of buying the dress was chaotic and perfect at the same time. Florence, Rebecca, and I visited 5 different stores before finding the dress in a discreet boutique on the Upper East Side. When I put it on and looked at myself in the mirror, with the white silk falling perfectly and the delicate veil framing my face, Rebecca started crying. "You're beautiful," she sobbed. "Vito's going to have a heart attack when he sees you." Florence just smiled with tears in her eyes and adjusted the veil. "Perfect. You're absolutely perfect, my girl." Vito spent days writing and rewriting his vows, scribbling in notebooks and crumpling paper in frustration. Gail found him one night in the office, surrounded by failed attempts. "Nervous? The great Don?" Gail teased, sitting in the chair across from the desk. "I run a criminal organization," Vito replied, throwing another sheet away. "I negotiate with politicians and assassins, but writing a few words about what I feel for her? Impossible, because you feel too much," Gail said with wisdom beyond his 19 years. "So stop trying to sound eloquent and just write the truth." Vito looked at his younger brother with gratitude. "When did you get so smart? Always was. You just weren't paying attention." Gail laughed. "Now write. And remember, she already said yes. The hard part you already did." So Vito wrote. "Simple and true. You brought me back to life when I didn't even know I was dead inside. You broke all my rules, and saved me from myself. I love you today, tomorrow, and every day that comes after. And when he showed it to Gail, the boy just nodded. Perfect. She's going to cry. Good, Vito said, smiling for the first time in hours, because I'll probably cry too. A week before the wedding, the entire Caruso and Esposito familia gathered for dinner, and for the first time in months, there was no tension or secrets. Just family, love, and the anticipation of a future that was beginning to materialize. To Claire and Vito, Bernardo toasted, raising his glass. May you be as happy as you deserve, and may I learn not to be an overprotective idiot. Amen, Rebecca added, making everyone laugh. And as I looked around the table, seeing everyone I loved gathered and happy, I knew every obstacle had been worth it. Chapter 10. Wedding and Surprise Baby Shower.
Now forever!
The wedding day dawned with an impossible blue sky over New York, as if even the universe had conspired to make everything perfect. I was in the guest room at the Caruso mansion, being prepared by Florence and Rebecca, while trying to control the nerves that made my hands shake. Breathe, dear, my mother said softly, pinning the veil in my hair with delicate clips. He loves you. You love him. The rest is just details. Rebecca was visibly trying not to cry while adjusting the train of the dress. You're so beautiful I want to cry and take 1,000 photos at the same time. The backyard had been transformed into a fairy tale scene, with white flowers everywhere, chairs covered in silk, and an improvised altar under a pergola covered with roses. The families were all there, seated and waiting, and when the music started, my heart almost jumped out of my chest. Bernardo was waiting for me at the entrance to the aisle between the chairs, handsome in his dark suit, and when he saw me, his eyes filled with tears. He blinked furiously to push away. God, Claire, Dad would be so proud. Don't make me cry before I get there, I warned, holding his arm. Too late. I'm already crying, he admitted with a wet laugh. And then we started walking, and all I could see was Vito standing at the altar next to Gail, breathtakingly handsome in his impeccable black suit, and the expression on his face when he saw me was of such pure adoration, I felt tears prick my own eyes. When Bernardo placed my hand in Vito's, he whispered quietly, "Take care of her." "Always," Vito promised. And then it was just the two of us, facing each other, as the officiant began the ceremony. The vows were the hardest part. Vito went first, pulling a folded paper from his pocket with hands that trembled slightly. "Claire," he began, his voice hoarse with emotion, "you broke all my rules and saved me from a life of colorless control. You showed me that love is worth more than any code, any power, anything. I've loved you since the first day you teased me with that smile. Now forever." I was crying openly now, and when it was my turn I could barely speak. "Vito, I always knew you were dangerous, but the real danger was realizing I couldn't live without you. You're my home, my refuge, my everything. I've loved you since always. Now forever. I now pronounce you husband and wife," the officiant announced, smiling. "You may kiss the bride." And Vito kissed me as if we were the only two people in the world, deep and promising and perfect, while everyone applauded and Rebecca shouted something about, "Finally." The reception was in full swing, music playing and people dancing, when I decided it was time. Vito was talking with some associates, when I grabbed the microphone and tapped it lightly to get attention. "Can I steal a minute from you all?" I asked, waiting for the hall to quiet down. Vito looked at me curiously, coming to stand beside me. "I know today is already special, but I have an announcement." I took a deep breath, looked into my husband's eyes and said, "Vito, we're going to have a baby. I'm pregnant." The silence was absolute for 2 seconds, and then Vito picked me up in his arms and spun me around, laughing and crying at the same time, while the hall exploded in shouts and applause. We're going to..." He couldn't finish his sentences, his hands going to my still flat belly with reverence. "Surprise!" Rebecca shouted, and suddenly the entire hall was being transformed. Baby shower decorations appeared out of nowhere, a sweets table being set up, balloons being inflated. "You guys think I'd plan the perfect wedding without planning the surprise baby shower? Please." "How did you know?" I asked, shocked, seeing my sister orchestrate everything with military efficiency. "Florence told me yesterday, and I ran to organize." She was radiant. "Now gender reveal moment." She brought a giant black balloon, handing it to me and Vito. "When you pop it, you'll find out." Vito looked at me, his eyes still wet, and together we popped the balloon. Blue confetti exploded everywhere. "It's a boy!" Rebecca screamed, jumping. "You're having a boy!" Vito went completely still, processing, and then pulled me into a kiss so full of love the world disappeared again. "I'm going to be a father," he whispered against my lips, amazed. "Of a boy. Our son." Florence appeared at our side, crying and smiling. "Your father would be so proud of you, Claire. Of both of you. Of all of this." Bernardo hugged us next, emotional. "I'm going to be an uncle." My God, I'm going to be an uncle. Rebecca approached Gail with that knowing look. Our turn in a few years, she said provocatively. When you grow up, he replied, but he was smiling and blushing. As the party continued, Vito and I stood hand in hand, watching our family gathered, happy and complete. After 3 months of forced separation, after the kidnapping and the fear, after all the tears and fights, we were here, married, expecting a son, surrounded by love. It was worth it, Vito said quietly, just for me to hear. Every second of struggle was worth it to get here. It was, I agreed, leaning my head on his shoulder. And this is just the beginning. And it was. The beginning of a life we'd fought to have. The beginning of a family that love had built against all odds. The beginning of our forever. What you didn't see in this story, Claire always wore black dresses on purpose because she knew it was Vito's favorite color. Vito started secretly watching Claire 2 weeks after the first kiss in the library, placing discreet guards without her knowing. Rebecca shipped the couple since Chapter 1, but pretended not to know anything for months so as not to ruin it. The dress Claire wore at the first meeting cost only $200, but Vito thought it cost thousands. Bernardo almost caught Vito and Claire kissing 4 different times before finally succeeding in Chapter 4. Florence knew about the relationship since Chapter 2, but chose not to interfere, trusting that love would win. Vito didn't sleep properly for 89 of the 90 days Claire was exiled in Rome. Gail helped Vito pass secret messages to Claire through temporary email accounts. Bernardo didn't monitor. The safe house in Siege 2 had 14 security cameras, but none in the bedroom hallway, on purpose. Claire broke 2 ribs, 5th and 6th left, but lied that it hurt less than it really did, so Vito wouldn't freak out. Rebecca planned the surprise baby shower in exactly 18 hours after Florence told her about the pregnancy. The engagement ring Vito bought was 3 carats and cost $180,000, chosen 2 months before proposing. Bernardo cried alone in the office for 40 minutes after sending Claire to Italy. The Russos were 23 men in total, all eliminated in coordinated operations over 2 weeks. Florence kept a photo of her deceased husband, comparing it with a photo of Vito and Claire. Seeing similarities in the loving gaze, Vito's first "I love you" was said in Italian, "Ti amo," in Chapter 3, before repeating it in English. Claire discovered the pregnancy 3 days before the wedding, but kept it secret to announce at the reception. The baby was conceived the first night Claire returned to New York after the rescue. Gail had already bought a promise ring to give Rebecca at the right time. Vito had the man who hit Claire eliminated last specifically. He personally made sure that one paid more dearly than the others, and if you want to check out another powerful story, click on the video appearing on your screen now.